Welcome to Pick Yourself Up show. I am Assegid Habtewold, your host. This show is designed to inspire, equip, and empower immigrants, job seekers, people who are experiencing setback after setback. Today, we're going to talk about military transition. Our men and women in the uniform, when they are done their service, when they come back home, they have challenges to find a job that they are passionate about, succeed in the corporate world. The transition is very tough. Based on her own experience and also from the research that she has been conducting, we're going to talk about military transition. With me today, we have Dr. Monique Chouraeshkenazi. Maybe I mispronounced it. So Dr. Monique Chouraeshkenazi. Maybe you better introduce yourself.
Chouraeshkenazi.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you for having me.
So my first question is for people to know you a little bit using 1 minute. It's kind of elevator speech.
Okay.
Who is Dr. Monique?
So, Dr. Mo, I'm actually an associate professor for the School of Security and Global Studies at American Military University, American Public System. And I've been teaching here for about 3 years almost, and I teach Homeland and National Security Studies at the graduate level there. I also have a security firm called the Chouraeshkenazi Group, where we do consulting in advanced scientific methods of Homeland National Security, terrorism, and intelligence. Also, I am an academic blogger. I have my own show called The Dr. Mo Show, where I discuss security, homeland security, national security issues, as well as education and military updates, because I'm still close with the Air Force. I like to follow up and see what's going on, even though I'm not in anymore. So I do that on a frequent basis.
So you do a lot of things.
I do a lot of things.
If you have to use one word to describe yourself, what would be that word?
So hard. I would have to say, I guess, unpredictable, because you never know what I'm going to do. I'm doing so many things, you never know what's coming next with me.
So should we expect that in the show today?
You should definitely expect that in the show.
All right. I know you served. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So when did you serve and where?
So I was in the Air Force for 13 years, and I moved about 13 times.
Wow.
And that's between trainings, education, different bases throughout the Asia Pacific, and then back in the United States. So I don't know if you want me to list all those places.
No.
But, I was in Pacific Asia for, I would say about half my career, and then I came back to the stateside, and I actually deployed to Afghanistan too back in 2010. And separated in 2015, I actually ended my career in the Washington, D.C. area. And I loved it so much, I decided to just, plant roots here.
Wow. Thank you very much. Now, let's talk about the lessons that you learned. Tell me 3 lessons that you learned in the military that helped you to make a transition to a civilian life.
Wow, well, 3... that's underestimating, because I learned so much in the Air Force.
Just the top 3.
The 3, I will have to say time management, because even though some people don't realize it, because it's something that's kind of, overshadowed, time management is very important. You can miss some opportunities if you don't know how to plan. And my story about transitioning is very original and unorthodox, so that time management thing that I'm saying kind of goes out the window, but it is very important. And when you want to separate from the military, whether it's retiring or you're getting out medically or you just decided that you want to go back to the civilian sector, that time piece is so important, because people don't understand time equals preparing, whether it's saving to transition out, whether it's planning for a new job or planning to live in a totally different state from where you're currently stationed. So time is definitely important. Going to the financial piece, saving is definitely important. I learned how to save in the military, because you're moving so many times and you don't know when you're going to move based on the mission, the criticality, and your own job. So it's important to save because you just don't know. You want to make sure that you're not leaning on the government funding that they do give you to move. You want to make sure you have your own funding. And that goes on beyond transitioning as well. Number 3, I would say networking, because each base, you don't know who you're going to run into. You don't know who's going to impact your life, whether it be a direct supervisor, a colleague, or even your commander or someone in your leadership position. You know, networking is important, so when you are on the outside, you can utilize those resources to help you get that job that you want when you finally transition.
Yeah, the last one I want to say a few words because, you know, in the military, you may be a great military person through the training that you have, you know, how you handle the weapons, you may be courageous and so on. These are very important in the military, but to succeed in the military, you need also to have some softer skills, the ability, as you say, to communicate with people, network with people, and so on. So which softer skills do you think helped you a lot to succeed in the military?
I believe it would be the communication skills. I don't know if people realize it, but I do hate public speaking.
It doesn't look like now.
And I remember when I was in college, and that was one of my first courses, I'm like, gosh, this is going to be the rest of my life. Don't want to do it. But you kind of grow into it. Even though it's something that I really don't like doing, I realized that my communication skills and communicating with my colleagues, with my leadership, and other liaisons, that it's critical to, you know, not only conveying the message, but they see your competency and your intelligence through communication. So it's definitely important, no matter what job you have in the military.
Yeah. Actually, one of my favorite motivational speaker, Les Brown, he said that communication is the #1 tool in any endeavor. So people vote for you, buy your products, services, and so on, based on your communication. And as you said, you know, we all communicate, whether we admit or not.
Right.
John C. Maxwell said, everyone communicates, but few connect. So communication is about, you know, connection.
Right.
Especially when you are in the military, you meet people from diverse cultures, people from diverse age group. Religion and so on and so forth, and your ability to connect with them is very critical to succeed.
It is. I agree.
Now let's talk about your transition. How was your transition? Was it easy, tough, or in the middle?
It was unpredictable. I use that word. I say that because I had recently, in March in 2015, I had served as the enlisted military assistant to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Dr. Ash Carter. So when my tenure was up there, I received a position to be the military executive assistant to the JIATO director. I don't know if people know what JIATO is, but it deals with the IEDs, a combat support agency, Army-driven. And I was there for about maybe about 3 months. And I had this epiphany. I knew what I wanted to do when I transitioned from the military. I didn't know how I was going to do it and how long it was going to take, but I woke up one day and I was like, I don't think I can go another 6 years. I think I'll be 6 years behind if I do the whole 19 in mind, because 19 I could have retired. So I just woke up and I decided that I was going to transition out. I didn't have a plan, even though I say time and preparation is key. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I needed to get out then. And when I decided, my separation date was in August of 2015, and I had about 68 days of terminal leave. So that put me at 30 days of work before I had to get out. So when I told my supervisor, he was actually shocked, because he was like, so you're just going to get out on a whim? And I was like, I don't recommend it, but for me, I'm going to get out on a whim, because I knew I had a calling to do something else.
So your unpredictable side came out.
My unpredictable and impulsive side came out. So only contemplated maybe about 24 hours. It really didn't, like, I wasn't trying to change my mind. I put in to separate, and
do you regret making that decision?
No, I don't.
Okay. Why?
Even though I missed the Air Force, I don't regret doing it, because about 2 days before my terminal leave ended for my military career, that's when American Public University System contacted me and offered me a job as associate professor. And I was like, in the 24th hour, that's how you think of it. Like,
Yes.
wow, how blessed and thankful I am to get that phone call.
So for you, taking risk is sometimes important. You may
It
not
is.
have enough data. You may not got prepared, but sometimes you have to make that kind of quick calls,
Right.
and that served you.
Right.
But when we talk about transition, military transition, our men and women in the uniform, they served their country. They dedicated their lives. They could have died. They could
Right.
have, wounded. After, all of those sacrifications and challenges, when they come back home to have, a job they are passionate about, it's very hard. And many people, I think you have some data. Do you mind to tell me how many of the, our men and women in the uniform who have, bad times or challenging times during the transition?
So the research I was doing is significantly different from what I did a few years ago. I want to say back in 2014, I gave a presentation on military homelessness of veterans who transition and they become homeless. The research I did this year is definitely more positive, but the numbers are still too high. According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Development, currently a little over 40,000 veterans are homeless at some point.
40,000.
And it's still too much for me.
Yeah.
And it's due to the lack of support, the lack of being able to transition. When I say that, it comes to their jobs. Some of the jobs don't translate into the civilian sector. Like, for example, if you're like a weapons loader, you're loading bombs and missiles on a jet in the military, how does that translate to the civilian
the corporate
sector?
world, yeah.
Right.
Different cultures. I mean, in the military, you have a hierarchical culture. And when you come to the corporate world, it's a flat corporate
totally
culture.
different.
Expectations,
Right.
challenges, and so on.
And sometimes I feel like it's due to resources, because resources are out there, but how are they getting educated to know, like, you need to do this and you need to make sure that you go to the classes and the courses that are provided for you when you're transitioning out, to make sure they have the latest and greatest on how to write a resume, how to find that dream job that they want, the education that's needed, the certifications and training that's going to be needed prior to. It's dependent upon the military service members to take advantage of the opportunities in the military.
So do they have these opportunities before they leave the military?
It depends. Like, in my position, I did. When I realized I had a love for security and intelligence, and I was attached to an intelligence unit, I took advantage of all the training that was offered. I told my commander, like, I'm interested in this. Can I go with my colleagues and do this training? And it worked miracles for me, because it's something that translated in the civilian sector, and I was able to use that training and the education that I had to apply it to the jobs that I have now. So it all depends. It all depends on what they want to do, and especially if they have a job and they want to do something totally different in the civilian sector, they have to see what resources that are available so they can take advantage before they transition out.
So because, once they are out, they have how many days?
And it all depends on when they decide to separate. I mean, it depends on how many leave dates, like the vacation time that they have.
But on average, like
On
60
average,
days, 30 days?
usually when people know that they're going to transition out, it's like you start preparing 2 years out. And I believe like your transition training and education is about a year out.
Okay.
And but some don't have that opportunity, like medical issues that can cause them to get out last minute and they're not prepared. Like, those are the ones that I'm worried about. Medical, or maybe lack of funding, so now we have to do like reduction in force. Those are the concerns that I have when those last minute issues arise and members are not prepared.
So once they are out, who's going to help them make the transition? Is it the Veteran Affairs? Or?
Yes,
Okay.
so the Veterans Affairs and any services that are attached to military installations, like the ones in this area, for example, Quantico has a Veteran Affairs Transition Office, and that's what I utilized when I separated. And I mean, they helped me so much, and I learned a lot just by meeting up with them, being able to file a claim, making sure I'm available for certain benefits based on my status and my rating. So.
But do you think the services that they are getting, are they enough, or do you think more should be done? to help them in the transition?
I always feel like more should be done. You should never be satisfied with what's available, but I mean, there's plenty of resources on the VA website alone. I go there all the time to see what's the latest and greatest for vets, and then you also get updates. They'll send you emails and let you know what's going on with the VA, what they're offering veterans. But I always believe there can be more. When you have over 40,000 homeless veterans, then that's when you feel like there's not enough, you know?
So. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back. Dear our viewers, we'll be back soon. Stay tuned.
This year, patriotism shouldn't just be about pride of country. It should be about love. Remember that to love America is to love all Americans, because love has no labels.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
Welcome back to Pick Yourself Up show. I am Assegid Habtewold, your host. I am with Dr. Monique. We're talking about military transition. We'll continue from where we left it. Let's talk about what should be done. We talked about around 40,000.
Yes.
Who serve their country. They're not having jobs. They are struggling in the transition. And there are some support they are getting, but we talked about that it's not enough. So what should be done? Like, if you are working, for example, in the Veterans Affairs office, what would you do to the people to help them make a smooth transition to the civilian life?
I'm glad that you asked that question, because I was actually thinking to myself how I feel like there should be representatives from the VA office that is embedded within the military bases. Like I said before, there's like a transition office. I feel like when people are going through their transition and educational training prior to going out, for the Air Force it's called TAPS, which is transition. I forgot what it stands for, but it's called TAPS.
Yeah.
And it's a 2-week program where you're learning how to budget, you're learning how to write your resumes. The Department of Labor comes in and they speak of certain jobs and how you can apply for those jobs in the civilian sector. I always feel like there should be a VA rep or somebody in a leadership position that's always embedded, not just when TAPS happen, but all the time, so they can provide educational awareness, even if it's like an annual training or maybe semi-annual.
Mentoring them, coaching them.
Yes,
I see,
coaching
because
them.
it's very important, because the VA, rather than waiting until they come from the military, they
Right.
could be able to help them
Right.
during the transition,
Right.
before even the transition
Like,
happens.
not wait until that 2-week period when you signed up and you have this class scheduled, but
Yeah.
you can also have them there on a frequent basis. That way they're prepared even more before they even start that class. And then these resources that are provided to them, it's kind of like either refresher or it's an addition to what they already have. So I feel like that's very important.
Yeah, one thing that I'm not sure, you were there, you could be able to tell. One challenge is that I have seen, because I provide training, especially for immigrants, for example, on how to go for interview, get the job, most importantly, stay there successfully. Because, one of the data that I found out when I wrote my book on soft skills that make or break your success is that for the first 18 months, 46% of new hires are fired. And 89% of them were fired because of softer skills than technical skills. So for the military, you may be successful in the military, and 2 weeks may help you to come up with a great resume and how to succeed in interviewing. But to succeed in the corporate world, I think you need more time, because even if you get the job, you may not succeed in the corporate world, because it's a different culture, the expectations, the values, everything is new. So I think they should have, a lot more softer skill workshops, trainings, and mentorings to help them succeed in the long term.
That's a great perspective, because I know I keep reverting to me as an example, but when I was 17, that's when I joined the military. So you have to think from 17 until when I left at 31, the military is all that I knew. So it's really, I wouldn't say difficult, but you have to understand the corporate language.
Yes.
You know, you can't write a resume and you have all this military jargon in it.
Exactly.
A corporate person, a civilian person is going to look at that, and you might be perfect for that job, but they don't understand
Your lingo
how your lingo and what you've done translate to their organization. So you're right about that.
Yeah,
You
because soft skills takes time. For
Right.
example, writing a resume, you could do it in 3 days, or
Mm-hmm.
for example, preparing for interview may take you 1 day workshop and so on.
Right.
But think about you being able to assimilate yourself in the corporate
Right.
world, talking to civilians, getting along with people from diverse cultures,
Right.
and being able to understand people's emotion, connect with them at emotional level, and so on and so forth. These take time, at least
Right.
for a month, not
I agree.
if not years. Yeah. Let's talk about your book.
Okay.
So you published a book called Homeland and National Security.
Yeah.
And here is the book for our viewers. And thank you very much for the copy. I
No
really
problem.
appreciate that. Let's talk about your book. What inspired you to read, to write that book?
Well, I love writing, for one. So I've
Okay.
been writing since I was a teenager. But when I became an educator, I felt like it was really important for me to, showcase my knowledge to my students. You showcase other people's work when you're giving them textbooks to buy and to
Yeah.
use for your classes. I felt like being in the military for 13 plus years, I learned a lot on the Homeland and National Security side. And from my perspective, I wanted my students to know, like, this is the technical and operational aspect of Homeland and National Security based on my experiences and my coworkers and leadership and all the different major commands that I worked for throughout my career. So that's really what inspired me. And when I had the opportunity to do so, I took advantage.
So is it a textbook in your
Yes,
class?
it's a collegiate textbook.
Okay.
You can use it for undergraduates and graduates, even military schools as well.
Who are the audience for you when you wrote the book? Who did you have in mind?
Students, basically.
Okay.
They are exactly what I had in mind, because that book is an amalgamation of Homeland and National Security initiatives. And what I noticed was when I was dealing with students, they would use both concepts interchangeably. And I'm like, it's two different concepts, two different responsibilities. Two different agencies are responsible for the missions and the responsibilities. So that's what created that book. So I wanted people to see the difference between both concepts as well as the overlapping responsibilities to protect the homeland.
So if you need to, for example, convince someone to buy your book, for example, what are the 3 most important reasons for someone to invest and read your book?
The fact that what I just said about, combining both concepts. 2, it's a 512-page rigorous book that I took 18 months to write.
Yeah, so
based on historical facts, and I think that would be a selling point.
Yeah.
Even when I was on a radio show last week, the radio show host was like, I would even recommend this to high schools because you have historical events, that led up to what national and homeland security is. So if you think about it, if you're a high school student and then you're going all the way to graduate school, you could use my book for like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I'm sold.
And then the third point would be, I definitely think it's important to bring security awareness to everybody in the United States. There's a lot of turmoil and everything going on right now, and I feel like it's incumbent upon me to write a good, solid book. So even people who are not students that want to purchase the book, read it, look at the historical events, and see what's happened when it comes to domestic terrorism and extremism within our nation, to understand why we do the things that we do from a government and military aspect.
I know it may be political, so you can skip it, but I know you studied, researched about Homeland and Security. So do you think that America is more safe than, let's say, 10 years ago, 5 years ago?
No.
Why?
I don't think we're safe because dealing with our current threats that we have, You know, we're still working on some issues when it comes to our adversarial nations that are against the United States, but then at the same time we're trying to work together. For example, Russia and North Korea, they've always been our adversarial threats since decades ago, 5+ decades ago. And when you're trying to build relationships with an adversary, there's only a certain amount of trust, and there's only a certain amount of information that can be given, but at the same time you want to give each other the benefit of the doubt when it comes to combining and establishing global peace. We have a lot of issues with active shooting in the United States in our high schools, and I consider it an act of terrorism because you have individuals going in and instilling fear within a large population, whether it be universities, elementary, or high schools. And the fact that it won't be dubbed as domestic terrorism, as active shooter or a criminal act, that's the issue. That is domestic terrorism in my opinion. So until we can clarify certain things that are going on internally, social injustice, you know, racism and hate groups are on the rise, we have a lot of internal conflict that I feel like is distracting us from protecting us from a national standpoint when it comes to our overseas threats. And with both combined, you know, you don't know what's going to happen.
Do you have any suggestions? Or have you written some suggestions in the book that you would
I
like
have
to
written
share?
some suggestions in the book, and I have more for the second edition.
All right. Do you mind to tell us a little bit?
Sure. One of my suggestions is to, when it comes to presidential administrations, when it comes to Congress, we have to keep them accountable as the American public. We've elected these officials to represent us, our nation, our resources, and our interest. When they are not doing their jobs, it's up to us to make sure that they do. So when it comes from a general public standpoint, I feel like we need to be more vocal. We need to be more educated on what's going on in our federal government and political systems, and we need to hold them accountable when they're doing things that are not what our country represents. That's the main thing. I feel like once we start there, we can get a lot more work done.
That's the democracy of the United States. I mean, people should tap into that opportunity.
Exactly.
Think about, there are a lot of countries who don't allow youth, for example, to exercise your democratic rights.
Exactly.
We have here, so we have to use that to make the government accountable, especially when you see something that's un-American.
Right.
You're right. Let's quickly talk about what you do. I know on top of promoting your book, you have also a show, and
Yes.
also you have a business. Tell us a little bit about that, quickly.
Okay, so I'll start with the business. The Chouraeshkenazi group is just a transition from the firm that I usually had back in Maryland. It was about 4 years ago I started MD Educational Consulting firm. Now I transformed it to the Chouraeshkenazi Group, which is a security firm that's based on security and education awareness. We do consulting, like I said, in advanced concepts of terrorism, national Homeland Security. And I also have the Dr. Mo Show, which is my academic blog. And it's a one-stop shop for everything that I do, whether it's my published work, latest events. I have current events, updates on the military, what's going on with all branches of service, and then my bio and everything you need to know. Also, where you can purchase my book as well.
All right, awesome. How can people get your book and contact you?
Okay, so you can contact me in my office through the Dr. Mo Show, which is www.thedrmoshow.com. You can also purchase my book through cognella.com. And for the month of June, we have 50% off discount. Awesome. So the discount code is Dr. Mo 50 off. So if you would like to buy the book and get it for 50% off, you can go there. You can also go to Amazon, Amazon UK, and then you can get it from Barnes & Noble.
Where are you based? You are in Maryland, in Virginia?
I'm actually based in Northern Virginia.
In Northern Virginia,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. I really appreciate you coming here, sharing your military experience, and also what must be done to help our men and women in the uniform to make a successful transition. I appreciate that on behalf of our viewers. Thank you very much once again. Dear our viewers, I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Until I see you again in another program, have a wonderful time. Thank you very much for watching.